It will come as no surprise to you that I love words. The first thing I do every morning as soon as I have my coffee in my hand is the New York Times spelling bee puzzle. I also start my day with some spiritual reading and prayer. Don't worry. Right now I'm reading one essay a day from Brian Doyle's gorgeous book called Notes on Wonder, One Long River of Song. I think I'm going through it for the third time, but the spelling bee comes before Brian Doyle. I don't think the spelling bee comes before God. I mean, not in the largest sense, but definitely in the morning schedule it does. So I was so happy to find a new word this week. I saw it posted on social media. Lynn posted it, actually, and I looked it up and then I did a deep dive. The word is meliorism. Meliorism is the belief that things can be made better through human effort. It comes from the Latin word melior, which means better, and where the word ameliorate also comes from. Meliorism is the belief that progress is possible. Progress is often incremental and usually slow, and results are not guaranteed or inevitable, but it is the belief that humans have the real capacity to improve our world. Meliorism is not a new idea. Human rights, democracy, religious and political liberalism all have meliorism at their foundation, whether or not it is explicit. William James and John Dewey, both philosophers in the American pragmatist school, wrote about it in the late 18 and early 1900s, and I learned that meliorism had a lot of fierce critics at that time. I'm not 100% sure why, since my love of words does not extend to a love of reading 19th century philosophy, I fear. But for your sake, I persevered. And from what I could understand, the basis of the criticism was that meliorism puts emphasis on the power of human beings to effect change, rather than the power of God. And while meliorism doesn't explicitly reject the existence of a higher power, it says, practically speaking, that our focus should be here, on improving the conditions on the ground, rather than worrying about heaven or salvation. I'm just guessing that the institution of the church did not love this. So I did find a modern-day philosopher from California State University, Dr. Andrew Fiala, who wrote a paper about meliorism in 2019, and it's entitled Progress and Meliorism, Making Progress and Thinking About Progress. I found it hard going, I will not lie, but I really liked his modern take on meliorism and why he's a proponent of it. Dr. Fiala wrote that, like his pragmatist forebears, he is not interested in grand metaphysical pronouncements. He says the world is complicated, our knowledge is limited, and whether we are optimistic or pessimistic about the future of humanity depends upon a lot of things, including our social location, our relative privilege, and the resources we have. He describes meliorism as a kind of middle way between optimism and pessimism. It's not naively optimistic, asserting that things are always getting better, when that usually means getting better for the tiniest margin of people. But it's not directly pessimistic either, claiming that progress is an illusion, that there's no deeper meaning or purpose to anything we do. Fiala says, in contrast, that meliorism is humble and modest and rooted in both history and hope. I love that. Rooted in both history and hope. The world we live in will never be perfect, but neither is it hopeless. Things can get better, but that better is not automatic or easy. Systems of oppression can change, dictators can fall, laws can be overturned and better ones made. And most of this happens because of the actions, decisions, and determination of small groups of people who believe in something better. Small groups of people who yearn for freedom and equality and dignity for all people, and who do not stop trying to create it. In my own words, meliorism is the belief that love plus tenacity over time matters. We may not know how or when or even if things will shift. It may not be in our lifetimes, but love plus tenacity over time, it makes a difference. It reminds me of that phrase written by our Unitarian ancestor, the great abolitionist Theodore Parker, the one Dr. King loved and used in his sermons. The arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice. This morning, the arc of the moral universe, at least in this country, doesn't seem to be bending anywhere but backwards, does it? Back toward white supremacy and hate and fear of difference. It has been a hard week. The news is bad. I don't need to tell you that in any detail. But I do want to remind you of some things I know you already know. The onslaught of executive orders that rained down upon our country this week was deliberate and calculated to try to cause chaos, overwhelm, and despair for people exactly like us. As the progressive sociologist Jennifer Walter wrote this week, our overwhelm is the goal. Because when humans face information overload, we tend to become disengaged and too disoriented to effectively resist. This is not politics as usual, she said. This is a deliberate exploitation of our cognitive limits, to which I would add not just our cognitive limits, but the limits of our spirits as well. I think it's just human to feel overwhelmed and to be teetering on the edge of despair. But here is the thing, we don't have to be overwhelmed even when we feel that way. The way forward for us now is simply to act, to choose a path of action, at least for this moment, and to do something, no matter how simple, how small, or how ineffective it might feel. Small groups of determined people doing small things in the name of love and refusing to stop. It adds up. That is the math of resistance. So we have to choose our place. We have to choose our places. We have to decide where we will put our focus, and then we have to act on behalf of what we love, starting now, this week, this very afternoon. And I know we care about 1,000 things. And all of those things are under attack at once. We care about immigrants and refugees. We care about federally funded programs. Many of you work for those programs. We care about our trans children and the environment. And it is hard to know what to do and where to begin. So we need to get very clear. That handy little handout in your order of service this morning, which has opportunities to help both outside and inside the church, it is just the beginning of a list that I know will change and grow over time. And you can post that on your refrigerator or your bathroom mirror. You can send us your ideas, your additions, your edits, and maybe that will help to answer the questions that we need to be asking ourselves right now. What can I do this week? Who does my heart ache for? And how can I help? What are my resources right now, and where is my strength? What do I have to give? How can I give what I have? Who is already doing this work, and how can I join them? And I know that some of us don't have a ton of anything to give right now. We are taking care of young children or aging parents or spouses who need our help. We are working full time and already running ragged. Our own health is precarious, or we are barely getting by, or we are struggling with our own anxiety or addiction or 100 other things. All of this is true right here in this room. Sometimes I stand in the back of the sanctuary while you are lighting your silent candles at the end of the service, and I see how much you are carrying, so often in silence, and still, and also. I believe that each one of us has something to give to this moment. It will not be the same thing as the person next to us. It will probably change over time based on our capacities, and it is all needed and valued and necessary. The way we can help our country right now reminds me of how we fund the church budget every year. Some people can give thousands of dollars and do, and some people can barely give 50. And we need it all. Every single dollar is essential. And when you pull it together, we keep going. Doing something now is not just for the sake of our democracy. It isn't just for the sake of those who are most targeted and vulnerable and who have little political power or voice. It is for us. Because not doing anything is the quickest way to those places of despair and powerlessness. And the bad news is that sometimes we're going to feel despairing and powerless anyway, which is especially when I hope you will get yourself back here, right here. Because this is the place where we practice love, very imperfectly, but deliberately. This is the place where we renew our hope and our strength for the week ahead. My colleague Victoria Weinstein wrote something this week in response to questions she was getting from her own congregation about, well, what is the church doing? What is the role of the church? What are we supposed to be doing together? And in response to that, she wrote, faith communities are here. to help us hold on to the ultimate things, the meaning of our lives, how and where we find the holy and orient ourselves toward it, how we remember and reaffirm who we are and whose we are. That's what this congregation is for. We are here to visit the sick, to support the grieving, and to sing the songs of our people. We are here to feed one another, to celebrate our children and raise them with the values of love, inclusion, and reverence for this earth. And our power is in our pooled strength. It is in our longevity and our rootedness. We are a place where people are called out of their aloneness and consent to be made a people of love. I think this is where we learn to become meliorites, a word I may have just made up, but I think it works. The words we started the service with this morning are from Rosemary Watola Traumer's poem called Because, and I want to end with the whole of that poem. So I can't save the world, can't wrap my arms around every frightened child, can't foster peace among nations, can't bring love to all who feel unlovable. So I practice opening my heart right here in this room and being gentle with my insufficiency. I practice walking down the street heart first, and if it is insufficient to share love, I will practice loving anyway. I want to talk about truth, about trust. I want to invite compassion into every interaction. One willing heart can't stop a war. One willing heart can't feed all the hungry, and sometimes daunted by a task too big, I tell myself, what's the use of trying? But today, the invitation is clear. To be ridiculously courageous in love. To open the heart like a lilac in May, knowing freeze is possible and opening anyway. To take love seriously, to give love wildly, to feel the shock of indifference and anger and cruelty and fear, and stay open to love as if it matters, as if the world depends on it, because of course it does.